Welcome to the deep dive. We take a fascinating source today, it's a whole book, and really pull out the core knowledge for you.
Yep.
So today we're digging into Tae Kwon Do, third edition. It's by Yeon Hee Park, Yeon Hwan Park, and Jon Gerrard. And, well, it really positions itself as the ultimate reference guide to this, massively popular martial art.
Absolutely. And if you're listening because you want to get sort of the essential understanding without reading hundreds of pages, well, this is your shortcut. We're going to pull out the key stuff from this guide, hopefully giving you a few of those aha moments.
Exactly. And it's not just about the high kicks, although we'll get there. This book, it's like a complete toolkit. It covers the history, the philosophy behind it, the basic moves, the forms, pooms, they call them.
Right. And sparring, practical self-defense, even the breaking techniques.
Yeah, and the stuff people might overlook, like etiquette in the dojang, the rules for competition, WTF rules, referee signals, all the terminology. So our mission today is really to explore Tae Kwon Do from all angles, go beyond the punches and kicks, understand its history, its philosophy, how it works in practice.
Okay, sounds good. So let's start right at the beginning. What exactly is Tae Kwon Do? The book kicks off with the literal translation, which is pretty direct.
Yeah, the art of kicking punching, basically. Tae is to kick, Kyan's to punch, and Do is art.
But that word do, the book really stresses this. It's way more than just art in the sense of a skill. In Korean, it implies a whole philosophical view, a way of living life.
Almost like a path towards, well, the book even mentions enlightenment as the ultimate goal.
Precisely. So while it's packed with how-tos for the physical techniques, the authors make it super clear that's only one piece of the puzzle. It isn't just physical training or mental discipline or philosophy alone.
It's about developing this thing they call the Tae Kwon Do spirit.
Exactly. And that spirit is meant to influence, everything you do, whether you're a student or a teacher.
It feels like they're saying you can't just read about it. You have to kind of live it, experience it. They actually say, study and experience with us.
Which brings us neatly to, well, where did it all come from? Its origins. The book traces it back much, much further than you might think.
Yeah, we're talking ancient history here. Around 50 BC, according to the book. This is during Korea's Three Kingdoms period.
Right. Silla, Koguryo, and Bokche, constantly daddling it out.
And there's actual evidence of an early form called Taek Kyon from mural paintings.
Yeah, it's fascinating. In these old royal tombs from the Koguryo dynasty, one called Muyongchong is mentioned. There are paintings, and they show unarmed fighters using techniques that look, well, remarkably like modern Tae Kwon Do.
Like what kind of techniques?
Things like the knife hand, using a fist strike, even classical fighting stances. You can sort of recognize them. It's pretty amazing visual proof from so long ago.
Okay, so it was around in Koguryo, but the book credits Silla's warrior nobility, the Hwarang, with really spreading it.
That's right. Silla was initially the smallest kingdom, and they were dealing with Japanese pirates raiding their coasts.
Right.
So they asked Koguryo for help. King Gwangaeto sent troops, they pushed the pirates back, and the theory is that's when Taek Kyon was introduced to some of Silla's warriors.
But secretly at first.
Apparently so. Passed down to just a select few initially, and these warriors formed the basis of the Hwarang.
Which means something like the way of flowering manhood.
Yeah, something like that. It became this elite military academy, essentially, for the young nobles. And Taek Kyon was core to their training. But it wasn't just fighting.
No, you mentioned it was broader.
Oh, yeah. Hugely influential group, leaders from royalty, cadets from noble families. Their training included history, Confucian philosophy, ethics, Buddhist morality.
Wow.
Horse riding, archery, swordplay, military tactics. It was comprehensive. And then they had Taek Kyon on top of that.
And they had guiding principles, too, some codes.
Yes, the 5 codes of human conduct laid down by a Buddhist scholar named Wang King. Really profound stuff.
Like what?
Loyalty to the country, obedience to parents, trustworthiness among friends, never retreat in battle, and never make an unjust kill. Serious commitments.
And the book connects these ancient codes to modern Tae Kwon Do.
It does. It draws a line to the 11 commandments they mention are part of Tae Kwon Do today. Same idea, really guiding moral development. It suggests that mastering the physical art goes hand in hand with having a strong ethical core.
Okay, let's jump forward a bit. The Yi Dynasty, 1397 to 1907. The book mentions a key thing happened then.
Right, the first widely available book on the art came out. It was an effort to make it more popular, take it beyond just the military elite.
And this actually helped it survive, yeah, because the focus shifted away from military stuff later on.
Exactly. It was called subak then, often. The later Yi Dynasty emphasized scholarly things, so military arts kind of declined in official circles, but because the public had picked it up for fitness, recreation, it kept going.
But it got fragmented. Passed down in families, maybe changed a bit.
Yeah, that seems to be the picture. Passed down more secretly, knowledge wasn't centralized, so it started to dilute a little. It could have faded out.
But then, 1909, the Japanese invasion and occupation, which lasted, what, 36 years?
Right, and ironically, the Japanese tried to suppress Korean culture, including banning Korean martial arts for Koreans.
And that backfired.
Massively, according to the book. It actually sparked a resurgence. Patriots started training secretly underground in Buddhist temples. Some went abroad, learned Chinese or Japanese arts, and brought those influences back.
So even though it was banned, interest grew.
Sort of indirectly,
Yeah.
yes. Judo, karate, kung fu were officially introduced in 1943, which maybe increased general interest in martial arts. Then liberation in 1945 happens, and all these Korean styles burst out into the open.
But they weren't all the same because of those different influences.
Exactly. Lots of variations, depending on who learned what, where, and how much of the original subak or Taek Kyon they retained or adapted.
And this is when the schools, the kwans, start appearing.
Precisely. The very first one teaching a native Korean style, Cheongdo Kwan, opened in Seoul, 1945. Then Mudo Kwan, Yunmu Kwan later that year, Chongmu Kwan, Chido Kwan in 46.
And more followed later.
Yeah, by the early 60s, there were 9 major ones. Chido Kwan, Songmu Kwan, Odo Kwan were also prominent.
But they all called themselves different things. Subakdo, Kwanbop.
Kongsudo, Taesudo, Dangsudo, yeah. And some still called it Taek Kyon. It was a bit messy. Each Kwan had its own emphasis, its own sort of flavor, based on its founder.
Which made unifying things difficult, I imagine.
Definitely. The book says this disunity held up getting a central governing body for 10 years. But interestingly, the art Taek Kyon was often the term used then, did become part of training in the new Korean Armed Forces from 1945.
Ah, okay. And then a really big moment in 1952, during the Korean War.
Huge moment. President Syngman Rhee saw a demonstration by masters, was incredibly impressed, and basically ordered it to become standard military training.
That must have been a massive boost.
Oh, absolutely. Changed everything. Later that year, one of those masters was sent to Fort Benning in Georgia, U.S. He demonstrated the art there to military folks and the public. Big exposure in the States.
And back in Korea, special units were formed, like the Black Tigers.
Yes, commandos trained in the art. After the war, in 1953, the 29th Infantry Division on Jeju Island was put in charge of all Taek Kyon training for the whole army.
So the military push was strong, but the schools were still fragmented.
Right. Until that big meeting, April 11th, 1955, the goal was finally to unify the Kwans under one name.
And they first chose Tae Do.
They did. But 2 years later, they changed it to the name we know, Tae Kwon Do.
Why the change?
The book explains it better described the techniques Tae for foot, Kwon for hand, and it also sounded closer to the traditional name, Taek Kyon. It connected the modern art to its roots.
Did everyone join then?
Most Kwans did merge under Tae Kwon Do, but not all. Hapkido, for example, stayed separate, developed its own path, and even among those who joined, there was still some friction, apparently.
Until the Korean Tae Kwon Do Association, the KTDA, was formed in 1961.
Yeah, that helped solidify things, though maybe not perfectly smooth right away. But the KTDA leaders had big plans. They started sending instructors and demo teams all over the world.
Ah, the global expansion phase.
Exactly, spreading it to every continent. And back home in Korea, it just exploded in popularity. It went from the army to schools to the general public very quickly.
And its reputation as a fighting system helped. Vietnam War, you mentioned.
Definitely. South Vietnam asked for instructors to train their soldiers, and those thousands of demos worldwide in the 60s, countries started requesting instructors. By the early 70s, Tae Kwon Do was, properly established globally.
Which leads us to the World Tae Kwon Do Federation, the WTF, in 1973.
Right. The international governing body recognized by the South Korean government for all Tae Kwon Do outside Korea.
And they started the World Championships that same year.
Yep, first one in Seoul. That really marked its arrival as a major international sport, not just a martial art. And that got the attention of the big sports organizations.
like GAIFF, the General Association of International Sports Federations.
Mhm. They're the link to the IOC, the International Olympic Committee.
And that's the road to the Olympics.
Pretty much. GAISF presented Tae Kwon Do. The IOC recognized the WTF in 1980, and that opened the door for it to be a demonstration sport at the Seoul Olympics in 1988.
Which must have been a huge exposure. The book mentions the U.S. team did well.
Yeah, women's team first, men's second. It was massive. For a lot of people, it was their first look at this Korean art, distinct from karate or kung fu, with those dynamic kicks and the protective gear allowing more contact.
And it was popular enough to be a demo sport again in Barcelona '92.
It was. Huge audience response again. And then the really big one, September 1994, the decision was made.
Full medal sport.
Full medal sport for the 2000 Sydney Olympics. The book calls it the crowning achievement.
And since then, the growth has been, well, enormous.
Unbelievable, really. The book cites over 30 million people practicing in 163 countries at the time it was written, making it the most widely practiced martial arts system globally. Quite a journey from those ancient murals.
Absolutely incredible. Okay, so we've covered the history. Let's get into the actual practice. The book starts with stances. Why are they so important?
They're the foundation, basically. Everything builds on them. The book lists a whole bunch of tension, back, fighting, forward, guard, horseback riding.
Yeah, lots of them.
Ready, tiger, twist, walking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Think of the forward stance. For example, a solid base for attacking. Fighting stance gives you more mobility, defense, and offense. They all serve different purposes.
Got it. And then basic techniques, strikes.
Right. It gives examples like the knife hand strike.
Mm-hmm.
And it's detailed how to form the hand correctly to avoid hurting yourself, curling the fingers, pressing the thumb tight. Also things like ridge hand, spear fingers, fundamentals.
And after basics comes forms or pooms. These aren't just dances, are they?
Definitely not. The book is clear. They're crucial for learning how to execute techniques correctly, the punches, kicks, blocks, but also for developing balance, focus.
Generating power.
Exactly, and building instinctive reactions. Plus, you learn to use both sides of your body equally.
And there's a deeper meaning, too, connected to the Tae forms.
Yeah, this is really interesting. These forms are based on principles from the Joyok, the Book of Changes. It's this ancient, revered Chinese philosophical text about life, the universe, fundamental principles.
So Tae is like the ultimate source.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Tae means bigness or greatness. Duk means eternity, something formless, timeless, the source of everything. And from that, there are 8 main philosophical branches or concepts.
And each Tae Kunz relates to one of those 8.
That's the idea. Each form reflects one aspect of the universe through physical movement, things like balance, coordination, breath control, directing energy.
So gave examples?
Briefly, yeah. Like in Taeguk Form 1, the first downward block represents defending a low attack, then the punch is the counter. In Form 2, you see defenses for middle, upper, lower attacks, plus counters, a rising block for the head, and inside forearm block. Each move has a purpose, building strategy alongside technique.
Okay, moving on to sparring. Kyorugi. The book talks about balancing realism and safety.
Yeah, that's always the challenge in martial arts, isn't it? How real can you make it without people getting seriously hurt?
So Tae Kwon Do's approach is?
Moderate contact, but with mandatory protective gear. Headgear, mouthguard, chest protector, forearm, and shin pads.
And rules about where you can hit.
Right. Generally, the front of the body, torso area, and the head. But the gear allows for fairly realistic blocking and attacking because your hands and feet aren't too restricted.
But you need the basics down first. Footwork.
Absolutely essential. The book stresses mastering fundamentals and footwork before you can spar effectively. It even has drills, stepping drills for movement, partner drills using palm blocks as quick counters, drills to react instinctively to attacks.
So it's about being unpredictable, adapting.
Exactly. The sparring techniques shown in the book aren't meant to be memorized combos. They're examples of how to react. Flexibility is key. They show attacks and defensive counters.
Okay, so from sparring in the dojang to self-defense on the street, different mindset.
Very different objective. The book says, first, try to avoid violence altogether. If you absolutely can't, then the goal is to incapacitate the attacker, stop the threat as a last resort.
And there are guidelines.
Yeah. Assume it's dangerous, target vulnerable points, keep your eyes on the assailant, escape as soon as you can after defending yourself, and stop once they're no longer a threat.
And the training itself helps prevent panic.
That's the idea. The inner harmony, the discipline helps you stay calm, and just having the confidence in your skills can sometimes deter an attacker in the first place.
And it shows specific techniques
Yeah.
against grabs, chokes, knives.
Yes, illustrates defenses against common attacks, wrist grabs, collar grab with a punch coming, choke from behind, knife attacks, even dealing with two attackers, always focusing on neutralizing the initial attack and gaining control.
Now, breaking techniques. The flashy stuff.
Yeah, the board breaking. It looks impressive, demonstrating power and incredible precision. But the book is careful to say it's not something you do every day in training.
So what's the point then?
It's seen as secondary, a way to develop body and mind. It's a visible measure of your power development and, crucially, your focus.
Focus. How do they define that?
It's about concentrating all your force, physical and mental, on one tiny point. It's not just brute strength. It involves relaxing before the impact and then tensing everything at the exact moment of contact.
So technique is vital.
Absolutely. The book mentions a beginner might sting their hand because their focus isn't quite there. Practice teaches you to channel that energy effectively. It shows breaks, like knife hand, punch, various kicks, front kick, side kick, jumping kick, stressing stance, weight shift, hip rotation, and keeping your eye on the target.
And holding the board correctly is important too.
Very. For safety and for the break to actually work.
Okay, shifting gears again. The philosophy we touched on Do.
Right. It's more than just physical skill. It's about developing a spirit for life, seeking harmony with nature. Do is the art, the path, the way.
Influenced by Buddhism, mastery of self.
Yes, those influences are strong. A key concept is duality, the idea of opposing forces interacting everywhere in nature. Harmony comes from balancing these forces.
Like meeting aggression with yielding.
Exactly, not meeting force head-on necessarily. And the book mentions the importance of being in the present time, being centered, aware, to balance those forces and strive for, well, perfection in your actions and thoughts.
And to keep things respectful, there's etiquette. Lots of rules.
Oh yeah, very comprehensive. It governs how practitioners interact, reinforcing loyalty, respect, courtesy, perseverance, justice, both inside the school and out.
What kind of things does it cover?
Everything.
Yeah.
How to bow properly, the angle, posture, how to sit in the dojang, entering and leaving, how to talk to people, taking care of your uniform, addressing seniors correctly.
Even outside the dojo.
Yep. Getting in a car, phone calls, eating etiquette posture, no talking while eating, waiting for seniors, general respect, social situations like introductions, handshakes, visiting someone's home, attending to superiors, seating at ceremonies, even rules around drinking and smoking and the expected conduct of leaders. It's a whole code.
Wow. Okay, and finally, competition, governed by the WTF rules.
Primarily, yes. The book details things like needing a clean appearance, no jewelry or glasses. It defines the target areas.
Front of the body, waist to neck, basically, and the head for some kicks.
Right. And what you can score with forefist, parts of the foot. No hand strikes to the face generally, though light head kicks might be okay for juniors. Points are for proper technique, balance, power, making the opponent react.
And there are fouls.
Deductions.
Yes, various fouls can lose you points or get you disqualified.
The book also lists all the officials. Referee, judges.
Juror, timekeeper, weigher, recorder. Yeah, each has specific jobs. It
Yeah.
defines knockdown, knockout, stopped contest, and lists all the ways you can win. DQ, withdrawal, injury, KO, point difference, deductions, superiority, referee stopping it.
What are the rules of superiority for breaking ties?
Yeah. It's a hierarchy. Powerful knockdowns count more. Foot techniques over hand techniques. Jumping kicks over standing kicks. Head kicks over body kicks. Counterattacks over initiated attacks. And generally, who is more aggressive.
Got it. And it shows the referee signals.
Yep. Start, stop, continue, winner, deductions, warnings, canceling points, all the visual cues. Plus, it lists the weight and belt divisions for different age groups and for the Olympics.
And lastly, terminology. Big glossary. Huge. Anatomy, numbers, movements, directions, stances, blocks, strikes, kicks, commands, titles, general terms. It really highlights the rich language that goes with Tae Kwon Do.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive into the book really shows Tae Kwon Do is, well, way more than meets the eye, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's not just kicking and punching. It's this whole system with ancient roots, a deep philosophy, real-world self-defense applications, a strict code of conduct, and yeah, a massive global presence as an Olympic sport. It's multifaceted.
So hopefully you listening now have a much richer picture, something well beyond the surface level. It really is. Like the book presents a holistic discipline, body, mind, history, philosophy, conduct, all woven together.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought for you to chew on. How could those core Tae Kwon Do philosophical ideas like duality and finding balance apply to challenges in your life outside of martial arts?
Or maybe think about how the discipline needed to, say, master a complex booms or develop that breaking focus. How could that kind of discipline translate into building self-mastery and other things you pursue?
Good questions. And if we've piqued your interest, really, take the author's advice from the book, maybe look into it further. Find a local school, experience it yourself. Like they suggest, you might be surprised what you find.